Philo. Philo was an Alexandrian Jew who comes to us from the end of the BC and the beginning of the AD. So in the first centuries on either side. And Philo quotes extensively from the biblical texts, such as Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Hosea, Zechariah, Ezekiel, and Chronicles. He just quoted from all three sections of the Jewish scriptures, the law, the prophets, and the writings. And often he quotes them as the prophet said from God. God said to the prophet. And so during this time period, he, as an Alexandrian Jew, is saying that we already accept these books as authoritative from God and being what it is to be Jewish. Our first century historian, Flavius Josephus, think latter part of the first century. Yes?
I understand that Ezra and Nehemiah at one time in one book.
Yes, in the Jewish Bible they are.
When was the split done?
Probably by the Christians, because I'm still of the opinion that in a Jewish Bible set up the way the Jews did it, there's still one book. Maybe he gets bigger print when it comes to Nehemiah and the division. But probably sometime during the Christian era, those books were separated. I'm not actually sure when exactly we break up the Kings into 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel.
So it wasn't during the Old Testament.
I don't believe it was during the Old Testament period. Our first century Jewish Roman historian Josephus was a rebel Jew during the Second Jewish Rebellion, and he switched loyalties to save his skin. He was on the Jews' side, and when the Romans caught him, he said, "Hey, I could be on your side," and so he jumped to the Roman side. It happens a lot. He's actually a good source. We sometimes question some of his writings. We know that there's been Christian interpolations put into the text. In other words, Christians have at some point gotten the works of Josephus and edited in parts, especially in the reference to Jesus. We know that there's enough in there that's probably Josephus. We also know that he refers to him as the Christ. Him being a Jew during this time period would not refer to him being the Christ. That's probably a later Christian addition to the Josephus text. However, the Josephus text does mention that he existed and does mention that he exists in the time period that we need Jesus to exist in. In Flavius Josephus' work against Apion, he refers to the Jews only having 22 books that are Scripture. What he's talking about here is the Greeks have tons of books. And the Greeks can't even agree on which books are and which books are not authoritative in Greek culture. But he is saying that the Jews have 22 books. And he specifically says they're written from the time of Moses to the time of the reign of Artaxerxes in the 5th century. In the 5th century. How exactly to explain how this works? Here are the 22 books of the Jewish Bible. I believe I gave you notes on this, didn't I?
Yes. Yeah.
Very good. So in the 22 books, you have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy as law. In the prophets, you have Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and the 12. So where in our Bible, we have the prophets starting with Isaiah and going through Daniel as the major prophets, we then have the minor prophets, and each one gets his own book in our Bible, right? But in the Jewish Bible, there's the scroll of the 12. And so that means everything from Hosea to Malachi is one book. There are individuals in there, but it's just counted one time. We count each book. That's how we get up to 39.
Say that again, Ozzy. I got my
Yeah.
my Bible open now
to the books of the Bible.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the Jewish Bible, you have like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, just like we have. But we also have Lamentations coming right after Jeremiah. Lamentations is in the writing section in the Jewish Bible. And then, right after Ezekiel, you get the scroll of the 12. And the 12 would be Hosea through Malachi. And so they count all 12 of those books as one scroll, or one book. The writings would be Psalms, Proverbs, Job, Ruth, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, Esther, Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, Chronicles. I look at my abbreviation and I go, is that Ezekiel or is that Ezra? And there we get 24. But wait a minute, Josephus just said there's 22. How can we get 24 or 22? Well, in some cases, especially in antiquity, Ruth was part of Judges. It came at the end of that scroll. And Lamentations came at the end of the Jeremiah scroll. And so sometime later, those books were broken off from those and put into the writing. Is that the Kethalum? Am I saying that right? The Kethalum? Kethala? Sure. They are the Hagiographa. I know that word.
Say that one again.
Hagiographa, the other writings. Okay, so that's how we get Josephus saying that the Jews only have 22 books, but they're the exact same books as our 39 books. We can see how 22 and 39 equal, right?
Yeah.
So from now on in math, 22 and 39 are just equal. I want to specify that, or I want to point out that Josephus in the first century specifies that Daniel is amongst the sacred writings. Daniel is accepted by the Jews in the first century. We're going to see here in a moment that Jesus refers to Daniel as the prophet. So theories that certain books don't get canonicity even amongst the Jews until way out here, those are just wrong. You can see from Josephus and from Jesus that Daniel is already considered sacred writing in the first century.